had impacted women in a number of adverse ways. What are these ways that the women were impacted? Number one was they were getting lower wages. There was no equal pay for equal work. That is number one. And secondly, which is most important, is the people were excluded. I'll come to it. We will have an explanation as to how, even though it was a law in general, but it impacted the women in particular. That is, the laws, particularly the forest laws, which deprive the people from using community property. Like, for example, forest. Previously, before the Britishers passed the forest laws, previously forest was a common property. The people could go inside, they would collect firewoods, they would collect fruits, because forest was the kind of source of sustenance for the community, particularly those living in the periphery of the forest areas. And the women were mostly affected because they used to go to the forest. So the Britishers, they snatched this right from the people, and they wanted that the people, those who go into the forest to do all these, they have to have prior permission from the government. So this was a very discriminatory law which the people of India had enjoyed this particular right for centuries together. The British took it away. So this is one in which there was a lot of discrimination. And during that time, particularly on these issues, the Britishers, they only selectively intervened. They selectively intervened means they passed laws which were against the barbaric practices, but they also did not try to do anything so far as the domestic front is concerned or so far as the social structure is concerned. At that time, there was a landmark development because in the women movement, the All India Women's Conference, AIWC, was formed in 1927. When it began, this All India Women's Conference, when it began with the agenda of only female education. But later on it took up a host of other issues like enfranchisement for Indian women. Now let me tell you, enfranchisement of Indian women means demanding the voting rights for Indian women, which they started demanding in 1917. Obviously, the British could not grant this right to them because even the British women got it, as I told you earlier. It was in 1918, and that too with a lot of restriction. It was only 1938 that the British women got equal rights of voting. And not only that, let me tell you that the Britishers, even the British women, did not have the right to equal pay for equal work till late 1930s. And if I am not wrong, it was only in 1937 that the British women got the right to equal pay for equal work. And that too after a movement. That was after a movement by the women. So as I have been telling you that let us not think that any particular society is much more egalitarian than the Indian society. But here the topic of discussion obviously of the Indian society. Then in the Government of India Act 1919, as you know, it allowed the provincial assemblies to drop the clause excluding women. Because before 1919, the provincial assemblies could not have any women member. In 1919 Government of India Act, it allowed the British women, it allowed the Indian women to be a part of the provincial assemblies with conditions. There are conditions. The condition was they must be educated and they must be holding power. Again, some restrictions. But to be fair to the British, these restrictions also apply to men also. It was not that these restrictions were only women specific. Even the Indian men who would be part of the provincial assemblies or members of the provincial assemblies had to fulfill these two criteria of having property and also having some education. Then, in Government of India Act 1935, those women who were either wives of or the widows of those men who were qualified to vote could vote. Do you get? Now women, there were some men who were qualified to vote. Their wives or their widows, they were also granted the voting rights. Others could not. If you do not have a husband or you did not have a husband earlier, you don't get any right to vote. Or if you had a husband who did not have right to vote, you do not have right to vote. Only if you have a husband or you had a husband who was the right to vote, then only you can have right to vote. But these are small concessions, but concessions after all. So gradually the women are getting more and more rights. Then particularly the kind of backwardness of the Indian society, which the British historians had tried to prove that the Indian society was backward, was belied, was this kind of argument did not hold any water, particularly when the civil disobedience movement started and the women attended this civil disobedience movement in a very, very large number. So this in fact destroyed the colonial historians' argument that the Indian society is a backward society and therefore was not fit for freedom. Now, participation of Indian women during the freedom struggle would not be complete. Any discussion on participation of Indian women during the freedom struggle would not be complete unless we discuss the role of Gandhi in it. Because, Gandhi had completely mesmerized the Indian society and particularly the women. And the women could easily identify themselves with Gandhi, particularly because of the kind of attire that he wore. He spoke common man's language. He wore the very, very ordinary people's clothes. So obviously, all these characteristics of Gandhi, the Indian people, particularly women, they could easily identify themselves with Gandhi. So that is one reason for which, when Gandhi gave a call for participation in the Satyagraha civil disobedience movement, men came out, along with them, thousands of Indian women also came out, dropping any inhibitions which they had earlier. Gandhi also, he stated that his Satyagraha had a feminist component because the requirement of Satyagraha, one particular requirement of Satyagraha is self-suffering. And Gandhi thought that women are more capable of self-suffering than the men. So they thought that the women could be better Satyagrahis than men. In fact, many women came out in the open. They faced British repression, they faced British lathi, they faced British bullet, and they fought with the British shoulder to shoulder with Indian men.